I may never beat the grandma allegations. But hear me out. Why do movies and TV shows have to have sex scenes? And okay, if they really need to, why do they have to be so visual?
Y'all want to know what I'm tired of seeing is X scenes in movies and TV shows. I don't need to see you in the heat of passion, things shaking and moving.
So visual to the point that many people are skipping out on the scenes altogether by fast forwarding, maybe covering their eyes, and even missing out on family movie nights because what goes down behind closed doors is now going down on our screens right in the living room.
It's ruining my family relationships, yeah. I wanted to take my dad to go see Napoleon or Oppenheimer. Historical movies, he might like them. But no, apparently they're not Arab parent friendly. The characters are in the middle of a war. How are you still clapping cheeks?
This is a growing conversation happening where many people are speaking out against these intimate scenes, finding them unnecessary, uncomfortable, and uncalled for.
Can we all agree that they just need to take scenes out of movies? Hollywood has been trying to desensitize us for so long now that it's disgusting. I don't want to see it.
And in a world where people wonder why the world is so hypersexual, they continue to show the world the most risque things to what? Desensitize the world, when in actuality we've never been more turned off by this.
Can they stop putting scenes in movies, like super graphic, explicit scenes? Like, it's like, I'm not watching, I just want to watch TV. And then they have the nerve to talk about this generation's hyper. Well, look at what you're feeding down people's throats.
Now, even though I have a grandma instinct, I'm not a prude, okay? The birds and the bees in the media is not a brand new phenomenon. There's just one tiny detail we're all missing.
It's not necessary. We know what's going on. Back in the day, they used to have it where they would sit right side up in the bed and the lady had her negligee on, and that was it.
Those scenes back in the day used to be known, not shown. There was a time when a simple fade to black transition told the audience everything they needed to know. An actor could, let's say, slam a fist down on the table, and within the context, the audience could assume they were probably about to get down and dirty.
Kiss me. Kiss me as if it were the last time.
It didn't have to be all up in their faces for them to catch it. The lines were written in code, but the undertones said everything they needed to say. Writers back then just trusted the audience to connect the dots. The dots being a bottle of rye, a rainy day, and closing up shop early.
It's raining pretty hard.
Yeah, that's right, it is, isn't it? You know, it just happened. I had a bottle of pretty good rye in my pocket. I'd a lot rather get wet in here.
Well. Looks like we're closed for the rest of the afternoon.
Another shot that told the audience without telling the audience is a film that relied on timing to deliver the message. So instead of a fade to black, a quick cutaway scene might have been all it took. Sure, back in the day, things in society were definitely a lot more tame, but the directors didn't stick to this cleverness because they wanted to be classy. No, the industry back then had very strict boundaries when it came to what they could show on screen. It didn't matter if the characters weren't even a couple yet. Just having a man and a woman that were unmarried in the same bedroom required a loophole. The plot of this next movie is enemies to lovers, so it was easy for the director to incorporate a literal boundary line.
Don't be a sucker. Good night's rest will do you a lot of good. Besides, you got nothing to worry about.
The walls of Jericho will protect you from the big bad wolf.
Now, since most adults at the time were doing it, they could already fill in those blanks, which is why known, not shown is going to be our motto from here on out, because you'll quickly realize old Hollywood had no other option but to rely on the audience filling in those blanks.
And I have no right to be in your cabin.
Why?
Because I'm married.
But so am I, darling. So am I.
The studio operated under a strict moral guideline that basically put every movie under a magnifying glass, which meant every single script, scene, and line of dialogue had to align with a certain standard, and they enforced it with a very strict code.
The Hays Code, also known as the Motion Picture Production Code, was a set of censorship guidelines introduced to the industry in 1934 and enforced until 1968.
Now, I want to say there's nothing wrong with some censorship. People were watching these movies in their living rooms, maybe with their families and kids, and morals were obviously very important to society back in the day. Yes, they knew how babies were made. Yes, they knew married couples slept in the same bed, but the industry was set on maintaining a perfect image where no one could potentially see a bad behavior and get the wrong ideas.
Prohibited a film from lowering the moral standards of those who see it. They felt that women, children, and the lower class had particularly susceptible minds. They wanted to be sure that films depicted correct standards of life, that they didn't ridicule laws or create sympathy for their violation.
It was basically an entire system built around the idea that anyone who wasn't a grown man was too vulnerable to tell fiction from fact. And it makes a lot of sense when you find out who was in charge. It all landed in the hands of one man who was basically the supreme ruler of American cinema.
You will understand that our production code administration is not a one-man censorship. It represents the considered judgment of many persons from the very beginning of the picture. We work with producers, authors, scenario writers, directors, and all who are connected with the production, and that our pictures may be the vital and wholesome entertainment we all want these to be.
His stance was that the audience needed this careful filtering, like by asserting these boundaries, he was doing society a favor. And within his speech, he's making these censorships sound like one big group project, but you basically had to run your script by this one guy, and I guess hope he was in a good mood that day.
Joseph Breen was named the head of the PCA, and he took a hard stance in favor of the code. Suddenly, Breen had the power to change scripts and cut scenes. He alone could prohibit a film from being shown, even for political reasons, like a film that depicted Nazis negatively because it broke a rule about depicting other countries in a negative light.
We could definitely argue about his priorities, but at the end of the day, he knew exactly who was buying the theater tickets or turning on the TV.
Boys, and change your clothes.
Couldn't we watch TV first, Dad? Do what your father tells you to.
Come on, up you go.
Parents with kids who enjoyed watching TV right alongside them. They knew wholesome entertainment was carrying the industry. And this conversation may sound a bit familiar as we've discussed something similar in my video, Kid Movies Are Getting Weirdly Sexual. There were things like dirty jokes, sexual innuendos, and jokes in these shows, but you know what? Families could still gather around the TV and kids wouldn't understand a thing. And that was pretty much the whole point. Everything on air had to be fit for a shared environment.
And these technologies were still largely built around communal spaces. Families would gather in the living room to watch TV, or the radio might be on in the kitchen. Your media consumption was often linked to the consumption of those around you.
This was just how society ran at the time. The networks had that control. They made sure everything stayed clean and sanitized for the family. And it was only a matter of time until the writers felt trapped and restricted.
Because the networks were starting to do something called, under pressure from Congress, starting to do something called the Family Hour. And this was, I think from 8 to 9, you were only supposed to have family-oriented shows. And you could only say and do certain things. And we were objecting to this because it was, in fact, censorship.
Trying to keep things clean for the household was pushing the industry into a tight corner. Luckily though, and I'm saying luckily for a reason, because if you push creative people to be creative with plots they couldn't show, they're gonna find ways to make sure you see it anyway.
There are some who feel that the code was actually good for the industry, that writers and directors had to use a lot of creativity to get censorable ideas across to audiences. This was a time when they used a lot of double entendres and a lot of innuendo. But others saw the code as really stifling and that it held the industry back from its full power and potential.
So in actuality, actors not being able to touch communicated a lot more than what we're seeing today. Sure, it may have put writers in a corner, but they were able to come up with plot lines that relied on what wasn't said. Or done, we should say. Implying and reading between the lines was the only way to let the audience decode a relationship that couldn't legally exist on screen. Because keep in mind, affairs and love triangles were banned under the Hays Code.
The screenwriters had to strike a very difficult balance between honoring the story beats from the play that the movie was based on and adhering to the Hays Code, which much easier said than done when the heart of your story is about a love triangle with a married woman having to pick between her husband and debatably the true love of her life. It put the production in a place where this entire relationship between Ilsa and Rick had to be implied and read between the lines.
This is so interesting to me because in a movie like Casablanca, released in theaters in 1943, even though the entire premise of the movie is based on a love triangle, they couldn't legally acknowledge the whole affair that made the whole story happen. And there are still people stating that this is one of the best movies in history because even though they couldn't show relations, the limitations actually made the movie a lot stronger because they didn't have to lay down with each other, they just looked at each other.
But Casablanca is just one example of a movie that actually turned out to be a better product because of the restrictions that they were working against. It meant that the filmmakers had to invest more in their actors to sell a relationship that they weren't allowed to outright acknowledge. It meant that the story beats fell into place and led to giving us what is widely considered to be the greatest ending in Hollywood history.
Given that the actors and directors had to sell something that wasn't actually on sale to work around the rules, they sold that chemistry by basically turning it into a game of math. Let me explain. The 3-second kiss rule had filmmakers in a tight spot because who realistically kisses for 3 seconds? And that's exactly what directors were thinking. Instead of having the actors kiss on screen for just 3 seconds, the film decided to test a loophole.
In 1946, the Hays Code banned any kiss lasting longer than 3 seconds. So director Alfred Hitchcock wanted to push the limit. In his film Notorious, stars Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman were told to kiss for a few seconds. Stop, whisper something trivial, then kiss again. The result feels like one continuous, passionate embrace that runs nearly 3 minutes long. The censors reviewed the scene and approved it without a single objection because technically, no single kiss broke the rule.
We need to address this before moving on to when things went south because trust me, these restrictions changed everything. Kisses and intimacy and the little they could show, we all need to understand that they were symbolic of something. This is gonna sound weird, but the movies in the past, they weren't trying to seduce you. They weren't trying to please you. Directors didn't want anyone getting cheap thrills out of their movies. If there was intimacy, it was there to carry the weight of the plot.
The kiss in It's a Wonderful Life might seem fairly lustful. Such a long kiss between unmarried lovers might have been cause for scandal, but this shot is followed in a radical ellipsis by Mary and George emerging from a church, married. In this case, the kiss serves a symbolic purpose by representing their happy union, rather than becoming a source of purely voyeuristic gratification for the audience.
See, that kiss was symbolic of those strict morals that they had back in the day, so it made sense. But eventually, things started changing, and society didn't want to be coddled anymore. It was almost like they were growing up and just wanted the media to grow up with them. And all it took was a look outside of America for them to see it. Movies from France and Italy were hitting local theaters, and they were full of raw romance that American directors couldn't touch. This was an eye-opening moment for the film industry because before this, the big Hollywood studios owned all major theater chains. So if the movie didn't pass through the Hays Code, it couldn't play. But with the rise of these independent theaters that could play whatever they wanted, it started to make America panic.
By the 1960s, an internal power struggle caused the code to stop being enforced. In this era, underground art films showcased people excessively engaging in real intimacy, like in the hour-long film Kiss. Films no longer highlighted the professional, detached quality of actors' performances, and the lines were being blurred between performance and reality.
These indie filmmakers were ignoring the rules completely. Ticket sales were dropping, and on top of that, they had American writers already in their ears complaining about the rules. And American studios realized they were sitting on money by letting the actors just sit there and look at each other. So they needed a new strategy. They didn't want to completely throw the censorships out the window, so they just tweaked the system a bit, and instead of deciding what got watched, they decided who got to watch it.
We present the following guide for parents and young people. It is designed to inform parents about the suitability of movie content for viewing by their children. G, all ages admitted, general audiences. GP, all ages admitted, parental guidance suggested. R, restricted, under 17 requires accompanying parent or adult guardian. X, no one under 18 admitted.
Introducing the rating system, something we follow till this day, it made it so adults could see the real world and real intimacy and kept the kids from being potentially overexposed. So I guess a win is a win. Adults had more freedom and the kids had less, I guess we could say. And filmmakers were able to do whatever they wanted with their films.
The Hays Code lasted for several years, but it began to fall apart in the 1960s. Audiences wanted to choose for themselves what was acceptable viewing, and filmmakers wanted the freedom to create their visions. The Supreme Court even got involved and ruled unanimously that the code was violating filmmakers' First Amendment right to freedom of speech. So in 1968, we got the first MPAA rating system, but the biggest change was the addition of the PG-13 rating in 1984.
Now, let's put some emphasis on the kids for a second, because if you didn't know, teenagers weren't even a thing until the middle of the century. They basically went from kid to adult. So this rating system definitely had some faults at first. And when the first few movies came out catered to this new PG-13, let's just say they blindly guessed where to draw the line.
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, along with Gremlins, would be the catalysts for the PG-13 rating. Now, when this came out, it was heavily marketed as an adventure film, fun for the entire family. But some of those families weren't thrilled with the violence, dark sequences, kids being whipped, and probably the monkey brains. Calls for an R rating began to spring up, which of course would not help ticket sales.
This guessing game led to a lot of other problems too. Filmmakers just assumed that since we had this new rating system, great, we can have rated G and rated X in theaters everywhere. Hey, at least there's boundary lines, right? The most mature content started playing at theaters. This led to protest and uproars, and eventually rated X was banned from normal theaters. But before they could be banned, there's just one thing. That dirty movie that caused uproar, I'm not even gonna say it out loud, y'all, because it's that dirty. It also had massive financial success.
The year was 1972. A graphic film came out that would cause a sensation. The movie was Throat, starring Linda Lovelace. Attempts to ban the film only made it more of a must-see, and Throat went on to earn a reported $600 million.
We are now miles away from the morals the Hays Code tried to enforce. We were in a new era of exposure people back in the day would have fainted over. People were able to go to mom and pop video stores because corporates like Blockbuster banned all the heavy stuff and play these movies right in their living rooms. And once modern day streaming services were introduced, it was basically a free-for-all.
So cinema, the medium that used to feel like the height of spectacle, which could send culture into a panic, now often feels like a relatively slow, linear, and focused journey through a single narrative. In this landscape, it's the phones and the content on the phones that are inciting the kind of moral panic and cultural change is currently reshaping the landscape of our society.
And streaming services were able to be accessed by anyone. This gave writers, filmmakers, producers, directors the possibility to add intimacy without needing to add filler in between those kiss scenes. But it also made it so that adult programs could be sitting right alongside children programs on the TV channel guide list. And that brings us to today. The entertainment industry has more freedom than ever to put whatever they want on our screens, and I think we can all say they've been taking advantage of that. But there's a growing conversation of people who are over it.
Even though I'm an adult, I don't need to see that. Like, you can allude to it. It's as if it's a requirement to have. And then it's like, why is that the first idea? Is it to kill time?
Why do movies have to have unnecessary scenes? I can't watch movies with my parents anymore because every director apparently thinks it's imperative that we know the main character has a drive. Aha, crucial exposition for the story.
Today, you can watch any modern show, and sure, there's probably going to be some form of intimacy in it. It's a normal part of life. This we all know. But I think where it might be taken too far is how intimate it is, and also how it seems like instead of adding to the plot of the story, remember earlier how the kiss led back to symbolize the morals? And I'm not saying that intimate scenes today need to do that, but there's no symbolism. It's just...
If you look at a lot of film and television that use a lot of explicit scenes in it, they have us watching these scenes very voyeuristically. Most of the time when I see an explicit scene in a film, I'm kind of just like, well, we could have gone without seeing that.
And it could be the most random, uncalled for type of scene that just seems like it's trying to do more for the audience than just entertain. We all know attention and shock is currency. It creates that buzz. And I think the creators of these movies and shows are trying to be as raunchy as possible to get the people going. But little do they know, people are going. Yeah, they're getting right up out of their movie seats and they're going back home.
You ever seen anyone walk out of a movie?
Yes, it was the world premiere of Sasquatch Sunset, and I kid you not, 3/4 of the theater left before half the movie was done. One, Sasquatch kids were watching their parents have sex for a good 30 seconds. The Sasquatch dad is a borderline abuser, and one night ends up getting super inebriated off of some fruit that he finds, and then ends up getting super horny and tries to have sex with a puma, and then we get to see his erect penis in front of that puma.
And if somebody can waste $15 to $20 on a movie theater ticket, you know it's bad. The movie theater is a space where you basically have to stick it out. You already brought the tickets, you already got the expensive snacks, and then all of a sudden there's a scene that you weren't expecting, and some people feel trapped.
You just don't sit right on my spur no more. Sitting in a movie theater next to a stranger, and that scene come on, and you forcing all of us to just participate in watching a flick.
So maybe to avoid that, they relax on their couch to watch a good show. But the exact same issue is waiting for them on the streaming apps too.
Why is all of television so overly freaked out and overly
in the worst ways. I just finished watching that new Netflix show, His and Hers. I loved the show. It was very good. But like, why do we, when people have sex on television, why do we have to see it? You know what I mean?
It's almost like you can't escape it. You want to enjoy a good show, but the show feels like something you shouldn't be watching at the same time. And it's kind of like a trap. I know you can just turn the TV off, but why do we have to sit through 30 seconds of something just to enjoy a good show? Yes, there is the option of skipping through, which many people take advantage of.
I'll be watching something, I think I finally found something that's about what the it's about. Bro, it could be about aliens. It doesn't matter what the it's about. They're always gonna sprinkle in some damn sex. Like, it's gone to the point where I just skip it. I'm sorry, but like, it ruins everything. It's just like, was this really necessary?
Like, when I be watching movies with a bunch of scenes, I swear I be skipping the fuck out of that scene. Like, nobody gives a
People are saying things like lost the plot and unnecessary, but I think the word we should really be looking at is uncomfortable. That's the feeling that a lot of us are feeling when we see it, especially when you're trying to do everyday tasks like eat your food and spend time with your child.
Tell me lies, there's too many scenes. I feel uncomfortable watching this show. I'm trying to eat and be with my son. It just feels weird. Like, I'm not trying to watch soft in a midday afternoon with my child.
It's this feeling that you can't explain because, to keep this as PG as possible, sex is a normal, natural thing. So why are we uncomfortable seeing something that every adult and their mama literally is already doing? Why do we actually hate to see it so much on screen? I mean, like, filled with rage.
I hate scenes in movies. I f***ing hate scenes in movies, TV shows, whatever.
You see, it could be because there's a huge difference between experiencing something and then, on the other hand, consuming it, especially when it's usually something that's private. Now, on the complete opposite field, there are a lot of people that argue that this natural instinct shouldn't be hated on. They actually argue that you're dumb if you can't handle these hot and heavy scenes.
Every 6 months, someone says, hey, scenes do not belong in movies and TV, they add nothing. You're an idiot. You're dumb. But when you throw out a statement like scenes do not move the plot forward, they don't move the story forward, that tells me at least two things. One of them is that you do not watch enough movies and TV. And two, you do not think deeply enough about movies and TV.
Not that I'm surprised, but it is very interesting to see the opposite field. Because while I do take very nuanced stances when it comes to this topic, my opinion stands. I do not need to see every itty bitty nitty gritty little detail. But I also love hearing how people think, and I try to understand where they're coming from, right? Now, don't call me dumb. Don't call me an idiot, because I don't want to feel like an uninvited third wheel to whatever's happening on screen. But these shows showing what happens in real life, it doesn't seem like it's hard to argue.
I don't understand why every single show has to have sex in it. I don't understand why every single movie has to have a scene. I'm so sick of watching a movie and there being an unnecessary scene. Have you ever considered that film and television are art, and art mimics life, and in real life people
I cannot physically handle another person saying they can't see scenes in a movie. Okay, then I want to hear that same energy when you see someone's head get off in a scene. Both violence and sex are key aspects to the daily lives we live every day.
While many people are arguing about how these scenes don't add anything to the plot, let's hone in on when they do. In the past, affairs literally weren't allowed to even be spoken out loud in movies. But movies like Casablanca were able to portray a forbidden relationship and still be called an iconic movie. So what's different from today? Why do scenes have to prove something?
So I'm going to disagree with you here, because scenes are frequently essential to the story, and even when they're not necessarily contributing something to the plot, they are doing valuable work in other respects. So a classic example of that first type would be something like 1987's Fatal Attraction. A psycho thriller about an affair wouldn't hit quite as hard if we didn't actually see the affair occur, right? If they instead just faded to black and closed the bedroom door.
Regardless if you think they add to the plot or not, we can't deny that the access we have to it, and I mean casual access, isn't cause for concern. Remember earlier when I said, and in a world where people wonder why the world is so hypersexual, they continue to show the world the most risque things to what? Desensitize the world? With how much people are able to see, and they're seeing a lot.
There was absolutely no need for the amount of scenes that there were in this
there was
episode.
a bit too much.
Constant. Like, it was like at least a 5-minute back-to-back situation.
And when you see something like that back to back, even if it's acting, it can't be healthy. It's numbing the naturalness of it, and it's making casual intimacy less exciting.
Scenes in movies do not excite me anymore. I don't want to watch it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to encounter it. Nothing. Take it away from me.
I can't imagine how the actual actors feel having to act out these scenes, not only in the way that they have to present themselves to millions of viewers, but the dynamic between them and that other actor. They basically have to be up close and personal to a stranger. They have to sell this intimacy, and then right as the camera's cut, they have to go grab a coffee together. Like, what?
It's a license in some sense to be emotionally promiscuous, I think, and to fall briefly in love and to fall out of it as quickly as you say cut.
So the actors basically just get to shake it off, get their paycheck, and then leave all the actual awkwardness behind on set. But you're the one stuck dealing with the aftermath of what they just did on screen. And it gets 10 times worse when you're not watching it alone.
So I decided that me and my daughter were going to watch the Tyler Perry movie together. Y'all, please don't watch that with y'all kids. Please. Joe had a filthy mouth. I mean filthy. All right? And the scenes, wow. Not so family anymore.
If you thought that was a movie that you could watch with your family or watch with your son or your daughter that you're about to send off to college, that's something y'all can watch together, it is not.
Tyler Perry has a very questionable but solid place in the Black community, and I say questionable because we've discussed in my old video, Black love is just struggle love, where we tapped into how it seems like a lot of movies can't portray Black people loving each other without there being some type of hell and high water. But it's a complete shock to me that someone who has made wholesome family movies that you could sit around the TV and laugh at has turned into something that you have to pause the TV when your kid is coming downstairs.
I've already peeped that, like, clearly Tyler Perry is not the same Tyler Perry that he was. Like, his movies are not the same. So my husband was like, oh, I heard Tyler Perry got this movie, like, let's go ahead and watch it. So we decided to watch the Joe's College Trip last night. It ain't the same. Like my son came downstairs, we had to pause the movie, which to me is crazy for a Madea movie or a Tyler Perry movie.
This just further goes into my point that the family viewing culture is basically dead. People can't watch a lot of movies with their family. They try to avoid it. And I would sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist if I said that it seems like they're trying to make us even more lonely in this lonely epidemic. And even the shows that seem safe have to throw something in there for some spice. I don't know, maybe, just maybe, people want a simple family movie where somebody isn't taking off their clothes halfway through. I don't know.
Wicked Part 2 is not for children. The man that Glenda was literally about to get married to left Glenda, went to Alphaba, and they was taking off clothes.
It makes me think about how even the shows that they do target to the young had a lot of questionable things going on too.
I distinctively remember the poster for one of the season premieres, and it just said a nasty piece of work. I just remember parents being super up in arms about it because it was super sexual.
And here were some of the other posters that were made to market the show. Every parent's nightmare, mind-blowingly inappropriate, very bad for you.
The amount of that these were having was absolutely unbelievable.
A lot of you may be realizing, wow, these actors were grown in real life, but they were supposed to be teens on screen, being turned every which way, and they just expected us to think that that was normal? But what else are the teens watching? They don't want to watch Barney. They want to see that mature content, but there is so much more to matureness than just sex. And a hot take that I feel it all comes down to is that there are adults playing teen actors.
They need to make a revival of Degrassi or some show like it, because there's no teen dramas with actual teens anymore.
And hear me out, I'm not promoting teen labor, because we've discussed what happens when a child star has to be the perfect child, the perfect role model for other children. In my video, kid role models aren't kids safe anymore. And wow, this video has a lot of cameos. But the fact that directors get to basically use these adults to show something that teens are supposedly doing is concerning, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
I think we need to stop making explicit high school shows, okay? I don't think we need to see teens naked, even if they're like played as adults.
I really don't want to see like 30-year-old actors pretending to be teenagers, like getting it on. For what?
To wrap this all up, we're watching these intense scenes play out, and the performance within them is disappearing, and that is not a good thing.
So I read an article about how this current generation is losing interest in sexy scenes in movies in ways previous generations used to get so excited about them. The problem with sexy scenes in movies is that they look too similar to pornography scenes. Not only does it make it seem unrealistic, but it also reminds them of the content they may consume on the low. And nobody wants to do that with friends, family, and strangers.
Because it turns into something that feels too realistic, which then makes it feel invasive. And that's the trap, because the industry thinks that they're showing us something that we want, which is this real, raw, unfilteredness, either for shock value or just a lazy plot, but it's crossing the lines in ways we never imagined. By making it so hyper realistic and then putting it everywhere and in everything, it's making the viewer uncomfortable, want to fast forward, and just feel like an uninvited witness. So maybe we're not prudes. We just want Hollywood to give us a meaningful story without having to expose every little detail. Thank you for tuning into the Girl Talk you didn't know you needed. By the time I upload this video, we'll probably be at 600,000 subscribers, which, if I don't recall, a year ago, I had 1,000. So, oh my goodness, like I could really cry. Y'all have showed out for me in ways I can't imagine, and my life is completely changed. I don't even know what to say, but thank you. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, whatever classy people like you do before heading to the next video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.